Fantastic. We're underway with the absolute legend, Ian Evans. 2 weeks ago, mate, I went to work. You'd already started running. I worked a full day, drove to Palmerston North, had a bit of a good time in Palmerston North for 2 nights, drove back to Havelock North, and you were still running.
Yeah, when you put it that way, it's a bit daft, really, isn't it?
Unbelievable. We were sitting around on the Sunday morning, and I was just sort of joking, oh, he's still going. And then it's when someone said, he's been running longer than you've been in Palmerston North this weekend. And I was just like, this is unbelievable.
Yeah, that was a long weekend for everybody, I think.
Oh, yeah. So mate, I had never ever heard of this blooming thing until, unfortunately or fortunately, I had the pleasure of meeting Helen Waterworth not long after COVID happened, and somehow she twisted my arm to make me enter 100. And thankfully, after a terrible 47K run, I saw sense and did 53. But I'm still hurting from that. But then, yeah, she said
that was relatively recently, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was 9th of January over the Port Hills. Great run, the Aotearoa Ultra. So that was my first gig dipping in the toe. And then, yeah, she was telling me about this thing. And you're now a veteran and a Revenant. So how the hell do you get roped into that?
Believe it or not, it didn't take much twisting of the arm. I actually signed up myself on the first year. So, it's been going 3 years now.
Mm-hmm.
And I've done it. I'm one of the suckers that have done it every single year. There's a few of us originals that have been there every year. But it's right up my alley. It's an event that it's very hard to explain. You can explain the premise to it, but the actual kind of the ethos behind it is hard to put words on, because at the end of the day, it's just an opportunity to go and experience time in some incredible landscapes for quite a long time. So yeah, when I first heard about it, and I'd seen the Barkley Marathons on Netflix and the connotations with that and the links with navigation as well as being a runner, I thought this sounds like a fascinating concept. And the fact that they'd advertised that failure is the most likely outcome, well, that's just piques the curiosity for a lot of people, doesn't it?
It sounds like an ultimate challenge, doesn't it, mate? You're centered in Wanaka, mountain mecca. I've been lucky enough to go hunting a few times around those mountains. What's the difference between going out on an adventure, having a loose time frame, and sort of letting someone know where you'll be and when you should be back, versus here's an area, try find your way around it, and by the way, you got to do all of this in, what was it, about 13.5-minute Ks or something like that overall?
I guess if you did the average, I actually haven't worked out the average. I know I've got 60 hours to complete the whole thing. But yeah, I don't work in the kind of splitting it down to that degree. I kind of take it one step at a time, because some Ks you'll be doing 6-minute Ks, and other Ks you'll be doing, it'll take you an hour to do a K. And that's the same, I guess, with hunting, isn't it? Sometimes you've got fast-moving terrain, and sometimes you're in the thick bush, and you feel like you haven't moved anywhere in 4 hours.
Yeah, mate. Oh, just odd there. A few of the blokes were saying that they were seeing deer. When you were heading down into the Nokamai, I guess it was beech forest down in there, was that nice and open, or were you into a bit of a tight stuff?
It was quite mature beach, so actually it was quite movable. And yeah, especially on that sunrise, that first morning sunrise, we saw quite a few deer out and about. And they obviously don't see too many people there because they were not fussed, and they didn't seem to disappear. And it was quite special, actually, first thing in the morning, seeing them silhouetted on the ridgeline, and then disturbing them as we were going through the beech forest there.
Blooming awesome, mate. And so you wear gaiters in this thing. What are those made out of? Because I've listened to you talk to the Crush the Cargill fellas and the Dirt Church Radio fellas, and Spaniard seems to come up, or speargrass. What are those things made of? I hope they're Kevlar or something.
I don't think, no matter what you're wearing, they're not going to stop Spaniards going through. Doesn't matter what the gaiters. I think even Kevlar Spaniards will go through. Like they're mean, vicious things. So I wear 2 pairs of gaiters. one's just a little moxie gaiter, which is like an ankle coverage, and that's basically to stop debris going into my shoes, especially when you're going through kind of the river sections and the loose rock and stuff like that. Any little bit of dirt and rock that gets in your shoes just is a cause for rubbing on your feet. So that's the main one there. And then I use shin gaiters as well, which have just got this kind of foam padding on the shin, and then just a little bit of lycra around, so a little bit of compression. And it's mainly as a deterrent for when you're, I don't know, kicking logs or slipping on things, and they stop the Spaniards a little bit, but they're more of a deterrent than a stop.
Yeah.
But the more coverage you can get, the more protection you get, I think.
And so how big is the tussock getting up there? Are you some taller than you, or?
Well, I'm not particularly tall, so that's not too hard. Yeah, especially when you're sidling on the steep hills, it very much appears like the tussock is bigger than you. Yeah. So it wasn't the worst year for the kind of tussock growth. The first year was the worst. But yeah, there was definitely parts where it was over my head, sidling through, and other than, even if it's waist height. The good thing this year, most of the loops were dry.
Mm-hmm.
So tussock moving when it's dry is easier, whereas when it's wet, if there's a bit of rain or fresh dew in the morning, it just gets super slippy. So if you're trying to go downhill, you go downhill very quickly. And that's when you don't want to slip onto a Spaniard, because you stand back up pretty quickly.
Yeah, that's right. And you just brought up Spaniard, but there's another spiky bugger on the high country down south, and that's Matagari. Is a couple of people ended up in a bit of a mess with that. Is that right?
Yeah, all these things to just make it a bit more fun and games on the way around. Yeah.
Nice, mate. So how has your training sort of differed from when you first signed up to year 3, where, gosh, you must have been thinking, I've got to get this thing now. I've got to suss it.
Yeah. Training actually hasn't differed too much. So I'm a little bit of an anomaly compared to a lot of your stereotypical runners, in the fact that I don't have a coach. I don't train for running. I don't have a training program, nothing specific, but I love to get out and adventure. So even having the Revenant or a race doesn't necessarily motivate me to get out. I just know I need to get out, just for fun and for my mental and physical health anyway. And as you said, Wanaka here is kind of the mecca for the mountains. So you get vert very quickly. So it seems that you park at the bottom of a mountain, and then the classic Kiwi way is let's go straight to the top, get to the top, and then turn around and let's come all the way back down again. So it's very easy to clock up 1,000 meters of vert in an hour and a half or 2 hours, and then come back down. And I mean, the Revenant's that it is just up and down and up and down and up and down. So yeah, I think they calculate it's approximately 16,000 meters of ascent and descent. So that takes its toll. So I think going up and down is definitely a good part of training, anybody's training. So that is kind of one reason to get out and adventure more.
And you said, you know, for your adventure for fun, your idea of fun is running up Roy's Peak. I've walked that thing twice, and I tell people, view is great, but the track is horrible. So how does one see the fun of running up handicapped to the top of Roy's Peak, mate?
Well, I mean, I so close to my home, and if you've only got a finite period after work or before work, and you've only got a few hours, then it's a good way to clock up a little bit of and as you say, the view is pretty darn good. We had a really fun event just after the lambing season, and we had a Roy's Peak handicap, and everybody had their PB, and whatever your PB ascent of Roy's Peak was, you took it back from 11 o'clock and you started then. So I think the first person started was about 9:30, so an hour and a half up, and the last person was my friend Joe. He's got a PB of 56 minutes from the car to the summit, which is incredible. So he started at 10:04.
Nice. You mentioned there about the lambing season. Is that, you know, what the musterers think is fun, running up hills? Is it? How it keeps them in good nick?
Well, I think some of the fittest people that I've ever met are musterers. They're in the hills all day. So I mean, especially some of the train and where the sheep get to. Those musterers, they cover some ground in a day trying to get those sheep in. So yeah, I think that's definitely one way to get fit. So I don't know where I lost you, but did
you said
so
54 minutes for the fastest person, starting at 10:04.
54 minutes, yeah. So we started at 10:04. So there's all these people that are staggered, and you can see them. And theoretically, if everybody gets their fastest time, they get to the summit at the same time. So you've got all these people that are moving slower than you, but they're so far ahead of you, or they're moving quicker than you, and they're behind you. So you're looking around, and you're being chased, but you're chasing. And so we all kind of got to the top, and one guy got his PB by quite a bit, so he was the first one, and then we all got to the top and had a little bit of celebration, and then cruised down together and had a beer in the car park. So it's a good way to do Roy's Peak if ever you're doing it.
Absolutely. And with Revenant, plenty of you, well, most of you using poles. Is that a good place where you train with poles and get used to that upper body input?
Yeah, I mean, if I'm running, like if I was going to Roy's Peak's a pretty maintained track. It's like a highway. Don't need to use poles, or I won't use poles. But as soon as you're going off trail and you're going pretty steep uphill, it does help you. For me, it keeps me in a good posture, keeps me upright, and I get into a rhythm. It's pretty good, and especially with the longer distance stuff, any little you can do at the start helps you at the end. So I find that if I'm going up steep off trail, especially tough circle going through the beach bison, and I'm stepping over things, I use more of those stabilizing muscles, and I start to cramp in my kind of adductors, and the hammies will go. Whereas if I use poles, it's just that little bit of aid, and it helps me kind of in the long run along that.
Fascinating things you learn.
Was it a hilly course that you did?
Sorry?
Was it a hilly course that you did?
Reasonable. We, I think, had 2,800 meters. So we had a reasonable first 50K. Yeah, reasonable first climb. I think it was a 400 up and down. And then we had just under 1,000 meters over half marathon. And then we went down, I think, about 400, and then back up 400, and then back down another 500. So yeah, my knees took a beating, and the thing I've learned from running is you need good tendons. Where'd you get good tendons from?
That must be genetics. Yeah. So I mean, I don't know if you find it. A lot of people prefer the uphills or the downhills.
Yeah, uphills.
Uphills. You see, I'm the other way around. I love the downhill. Uphill is always a grind, but the downhill is where I have a lot of fun, and that's where I often make up a lot of time. But it probably, for those people that don't like downhills, the most impactful on the body. Because you're often braking the whole time, and it seems to shatter the quads, and the knees are hurting, and then you get to the bottom and you try to run again, and your calves seize up. And
yes, that's exactly right. Mate, you're from the UK, from Birmingham. Where do you go for mountains over there? Wales, Scotland? Is there anything in the actual main part of England, or you got to jump the borders?
Mostly you jump the borders. I mean, you can go up to the Lake District, which is kind of the northwest of England, and that's where the iconic Bob Graham round is. So that's in the Lake District. But so we did a little bit of holidays going up there, but a lot of times we went to North Wales, into Snowdonia, and then over the border up into Scotland and in the Highlands, which is where the kind of real mountains of the UK are. I would say.
And so, what sort of adventures would you go on with your? I heard your dad growing up. What would that sort of involve?
So my dad's a classic one for trying to get away from people. So he spent a lot of time outdoors, and if there was a maintained trail, well, that was typically where people are going to be. So we'll try and have an adventure and go off trail. And there's a lot of times, especially when you get up to Scotland, where it reminds me a lot of actually down south here in Otago, kind of big kind of rolling hills. Sometimes like it's the weather that can make it quite dramatic and serious, and especially in Scotland it rains seemingly every day. a lot of the cloud come in, so you can be in the middle of where you feel is nowhere. So the navigation side of it, you had to be pretty clued up with. The mountains aren't particularly high. I mean, the highest mountain in the whole of the UK, Ben Nevis, is barely over 1,300 meters.
Wow.
But you can get into some serious trouble if you're out there in the wrong conditions and disorientate yourself. So I grew up pretty early on, following my dad into places, and thankfully having him to get us out, which he always did, but learning those kind of tricks as to kind of what sort of features to look for, what sort of landscapes, kind of your handrails and your basic navigation. Because navigation is fine and easy when you can see. It's a little more problematic when either it's dark or when all the cloud comes in.
Yeah, so just on that, what sort of features were you looking for in the dark? Just bearings or what?
So bearings a couple of times, yes. Especially there was a couple of intricate ones, especially when you go into the beech forests. You want to kind of know you're heading off in the right direction. But there's also a lot of open kind of tussock land in the Revenant. So streams coming in, kind of spurs and bigger features. There's actually pretty good markings with some of the fences and some of the kind of the bike trail around there. So you could use that as a feature. But yeah, everything in the dark is just so much slower and so much smaller detail oriented. So, I mean, the first 2 days, the weather was absolutely glorious. Too hot for most. I think the heat sapped a lot of people, but the navigation wasn't particularly hard when you can see for 200 kilometers. When you can see that's the spur and that's the summit I need to aim for, that's the valley we're going to. Whereas when the dark comes in and you can't see further than the beam of your head torch, that's when everything, you just have to really kind of dial it back and take things much slower and steadier, because you can get, if you get off trail or get wrong, you can get wrong very quickly. And if you don't notice it, then you probably end up hiking back up for 2 hours to try and get back where you were to reassess.
And how's the sort of nerves or energy or anxiety in the dark, and no doubt with not much sleep?
Yeah, the dark doesn't bother me at all. I think it's actually quite good fun in the dark. It's quite atmospheric, and the second night especially, we had, the weather had changed and the wind started to come in, and added a little bit more of a dynamic, which was, again, quite good fun. Part of the game to kind of battle with. Sleep makes things interesting, sleep deprivation, because when you're tired and in the dark, my head tries to make sense of objects. So I don't necessarily hallucinate, but I definitely see things that aren't there because I'm making sense of shapes until I realize what they are. So I saw rhinos and gazebos put up and stuff, and then you realize, it's just a bunch of a tree or a big rock. And so it wasn't a hallucination as such, it's just my brain making sense of objects. And with the wind, the tussock was blowing everything, so it just looked like the whole world was moving. So, and that's kind of the stage when I know that probably need to get some rest at some point.
And so it's just that, as simple as a bit of pattern recognition, and then it's not until you really can see it that things become clear.
That's it, yeah. And you know that, so it's not like I had I don't know, a giraffe eating an ice cream walking next to me and I was having a chat with. It was just seeing those sort of those features and trying to work out what they were. Yeah.
And just while we're on the navigation, what were the tools that you had? What sort of quality map were you using? Was it sort of standard issue compass?
Map. Standard issue compass. I've got one that you can preset the declination, so I didn't have to worry about kind of adapting to that. And yeah, standard NZ Popo for 1 to 50,000, which makes some things a little bit trickier. Especially growing up, I used a bit more of a kind of a finer scale, so you get a bit better idea of those smaller spurs that are going off in the similar sort of direction, but not the same sort of direction. Whereas a 1 to 50,000, and with 20 meter contours, there's a lot can happen in 20 meters. I can tell you that for sure.
Yes, I'm very familiar with what can happen in 20 meters. Sometimes that bit of scrub is just what you need. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, fantastic. And so down on the Nokamai, you said it's not hard for Tussock to be taller than you, but what about boulders, man?
Well, I mean, and the difference between last year and this year, with all the water and the flooding they had in Southland, there was all sorts of debris going through the river, and boulders less so much, but trees and branches that are falling over that you got to scramble, and there's a couple of things stepping up, and it's always interesting. But actually, the rock is really grippy even when it's wet. Mm-hmm. Which is really comforting, and you've got that security under your foot, means that actually you can trust it. Whereas I've been in rivers before where you kind of get this slime on rocks and you're slipping and you're skating the whole way, whereas actually the moving through the river was pretty good going. Mm-hmm. So what did I do? So I had to go through the Nakamai kind of gorge part 4 times, 3 of which I did in the daytime, and 1 of them I did on my own in the night. And it's so much different in the night to in the daytime. In the nighttime, you don't see all the animal tracks off the side, so you literally have to stick in the river. And the quickest way is to walk up through the river. And with a little bit of sleep deprivation, it's quite trippy. Mm-hmm. Like you see all sorts in the river, and of course the water's moving, the sounds, and you're clambering up stuff that normally you'd skirt around. But there's a couple of times I actually turned my head torch off. They had glowworms. There's glowworms in the Nagamai, so it's my first time I've actually seen those, and I know I had a bit of time, so I stood there for 5-10 seconds, and started to see some of the glowworms. So that was really cool, actually.
Yeah, and how were the stars on that first night?
Oh, it was a crystal clear night. It was absolutely stunning. So, like, the weather-wise, with the exception of the heat, we mm-hmm. couldn't complain at all. Like it was a clear night sky. It was a new moon, so it was all the stars that were out. You can see all the constellations, and if you had time, which I suppose we did have plenty of time, we had all night. Really enjoy it, but it's one of those when you're slogging up a hill that sometimes you're just looking at the tussock in front of you.
Yeah. So you said there that your nighttime mission was up the hill. Was that on your 1 to 14 or 14 to 1 direction?
So I went through 2 nights, and you go uphill and downhill throughout the entire night. That is basically the Revenant course. There's a bit of flat in it, but it's up and down and up and down. So the first night I had company. I had Michael Stewart with me for the first until midnight. So that was halfway through the second loop. And then his IT band went, so he left me. So before he left me, he tried to help me sleep, because one of the things with Revenant is you don't have a watch, so you have no idea how long you're going to sleep for. So because he knew he was stopping, he sat there with me whilst I tried to sleep so he could wake me up. But I was so wired that first night and so excited there was just no way I was going to go to sleep. So after 5 minutes, I sat and went, well, this is a waste of time. So he helped me. He had his headlamp, so I changed the batteries in my head torch. Bid him farewell. He wished me luck, and then spent the rest of that night on my own. And as I say, I actually quite like going at night on my own. It's quite good fun, and I was still feeling really good at that point, and my navigation had been on the money, which is always a confidence kind of boost. But the second night was probably the harder one, because I knew I was the only person out on course. I didn't see any sign of light from when I left transition at 11:15, and I saw the first person from the race at 7 o'clock the next morning. I very much felt on my own, which is, I mean, half of the idea with the Revenant, and that's what they want. It's a self-supported race, but it's definitely an interesting feeling to suddenly realise that, I'm completely on my own right now. Nobody around.
So what does sleep in a adventure race look like? I've heard Courtney DeWalder talk about her Moab 240, how she slept for 20 seconds, and when she woke up, she harassed her support crew for letting her sleep too long, and they were like, well, you just fell asleep. What did it look like for you? Well, obviously you can't really tell because no one was there to tell you at the time, but how approximately long did you get to sleep?
Well, yeah, I mean, well, this is the fascinating thing, because actually, like, I don't know. I've got a good idea, I think, but I really don't know. So what I think I did, so I actually backtrace it all the way to before the race. So from when I got up on Thursday morning, race briefing was Thursday afternoon. So I got up at whatever, 9 o'clock, tried to sleep in on Thursday morning, get my sleep, had the race briefing, were told we had to meet Friday morning at 3:45. So went up to the start. I was so excited. I was like a kid before Christmas. So I probably managed about an hour and a half sleep the night before. So that's a good start. And then, so I had the first day. It's great. Didn't need sleep. I was so wired the first night. Didn't sleep. Started to get sleepy on Saturday morning. So that's what, Thursday night and Friday night without sleeping. So the heat was still really hot. So the combination of heat and the sleep, I knew I needed to take a rest. And I probably made it to about 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And I was like, I need to. I was aiming for the beach forest. It's a bit cooler, get out of the sun. I didn't quite make it there because I was stumbling a little. And as far as I can gauge, I probably had 5 or 10 minutes. One of those. So I sat down with my back against a wall and nodded off. And I think as soon as you nod off, you wake back up because you're so uncomfortable. And judging from, there's a couple of checkpoints that have watches in them, and judging from the time there, I kind of slept long. So I reckon, 5 or 10 minutes max. So I then went through the rest of the Saturday and then into the Saturday night, sorry. And then I was trying to get through Saturday night to Sunday morning to wake up for the sunrise. That didn't happen. I was stumbling. I was like a drunk man stumbling home from the pub, trying to focus on the rocks in front of me. And at that point, I knew I just needed to sleep. So I reckon I slept from about 4:30 to about 5:15, on and off in the cold. So between half an hour and 45 minutes of broken, cold sleep. And then that sorted me right out. And then we got to the next checkpoint with a watch at 6 o'clock. So I knew that I probably slept anywhere between half an hour and 45 minutes. So from when I got up Thursday morning to when I went to bed Sunday night, I probably got about 2.5 hours sleep.
Wow. And you said it's self-assisted. So what's in those little, how big was your ultra backpack and what did you have in there?
So I had a race vest, kind of a running pack, which is 15 litres. And then I had a waist pack as well for kind of extra stuff. So everything that's mainly in my race pack, my vest, I didn't want to use. So it was all my mandatory kit, kind of my thermal layers, waterproof top, bottom, my bivy bag, hats, gloves, etc. And then on the front, I had my water bottles and some snacks. And then everything that I wanted accessible, I had on my waist pack. So a lot of my food was stored in my waist pack. My head torch was in the waist pack. Another drink bottle, a couple of drink bottles were there. And that way with a with a waist belt, I could move it around, I could pick things out, I can scoff on food, I can store the kind of pages that you got to get from the checkpoints, and I didn't have to take my actual race vest, my running vest off at all until I wanted to sleep, and then I put my layers on. Yeah.
And so at these sort of checkpoints, was there stuff that you could have left, like major food or like I saw or read that on your Instagram about your feet, you had the change of shoes. Where were they?
Yeah, so the Revenant is a looped-based course. So you've got to do 4 loops. So it's the same loop of 14 checkpoints that you alternate directions each loop. So each loop is about 50 kilometers, 4,000 meters of vert. And then you come back into kind of start-finish area with a transition. And you're allowed 90 liters of storage.
Right.
So you can have like resupplies of your food, anything that you want, you have to bring. It's all self-supported. So nobody can give you any aid or anything. So in my box, for example, I had changes of clothes, change of shoes, socks, all my nutrition. both to take out on a loop with me, but also to eat whilst I was in transition. So bags of chips, some pork scratchings, some couscous, all sorts of things that I wouldn't want to take out with me, but were good to have. Some people have a sleeping bag. I took a jet boil, took a stove, so I could cook up and boil some water and have some dehy meals. So that was also part of my food.
Was that the radix that you were using? I think that's how
I've had
came
radix
across you.
and yeah, so radix, some of their meals, and also there's a really good company here in Harware that's called Local Dehy, and they make some really good meals as well. So their breakfast, their apple, feijoa, and ginger breakfast hits the spot really well. It's a good one.
Very good. And what sort of snacks and things would you take with you on the course?
So I'm typically a real food sort of guy.
I get that from the pork scratching.
I was craving them so badly, just kind of that salt, and it was good. My food that I take out on the course, so I had you kind of classic with your lollies and a couple of brownie bars. Made some wraps. Some kind of lamb and cheese and some kind of spinach wraps, which were really good the first day, but then because it was so hot and they were sat in my transition bag, got all soggy, so I didn't have them later on in the thing. Some dried mango. What else did I have? So I had those dehy meals, which I actually took out on course, and then I also used a few gels just to kind of supplement going through the race. So I had about 5 or 6 gels each loop. And a lot of that is one for the kind of sodium. It's easy for the sodium, and there's a little bit of caffeine in them. And it's that kind of quick energy. So if ever I felt I was getting low of energy, I'd have a gel and some real food. So I kind of get that quick release just straight away, but then something a little bit longer lasting. So I wouldn't get that super high and then that crash again. So anytime I took a gel, I'd have some real food at the same time. And then in the second, third, and fourth loop, I also had 1 sachet of Tailwind, which had a little bit of caffeine in it per loop. So it was only about 200 calories and a bit of caffeine, but I'd sip that over the course of the loop.
And then in your bottles, just water, or what were you going with?
Water, yeah. So I typically just use water, and if I'm going out on an adventure out into the mountains, I just use water. So I had the capacity for about 2 liters. A lot of the times I wasn't carrying 2 liters because I knew it wouldn't take me too long to get between sources. And if I was in the Nakamai River, there's water there. So as soon as I get into the Nakamai, I empty all of my water bottles. And then I've just got a really small one that I just keep using like a cup. Because that saves you 2 kilos that you have to carry for an hour and a half, 2 hours. And every little helps. Oh yeah,
I got rid of my 1.5 litre pack with about 16 k's to go on my run, and oh wow, what a difference that made. So how were you sort of carrying that up to 2 litres?
All hard bottles.
So
I'm a big advocate with those sort of races with using hard flasks, because you're refilling them all the time. It is so much quicker and easier to scoop up water with a big hard flask. So on my waist belt, I had 2 500 or 600 ml hard bottles.
Are they and then the jelly duck, what are they called? Plasticky, or what are they like?
So kind of like Camelback do a bottle. Kind of those half flasks. You see that you put them, like bikers have them in their bike frame, those water bottles, just a standard one like that. And then I actually, in my running vest at the front, I use, because they're designed for soft flasks and I didn't want soft flasks, I actually used the milk and cream bottles there's a Lewis Road Creamery, which gives you 300 mils of cream. It's great, and that's like my cup, so that slides in, and I use that a lot all the time. And then there's a 700 ml milk one, and because it's that sort of plasticky but malleable, it actually sits really well in my pack and slides in. So actually those are my hard bottles that I use on my vest. So so a litre on me on my vest, and then a litre in the waist pack.
And did you say that's just best for scooping or getting the lid back on, or what are you trying to say by that?
So it's because I'm getting them in and out all the time. Soft flasks I find are really difficult to put back into a vest when it's on. I find trying to jab them in, and they end up squirting me in the face and losing half the water when I try and put them in. And yeah, so, and they're quite hard to fill a lot of the times. And it's that getting them in and out, whereas I find hard flasks really quite easy. The only downside with them is you have to take them out to drink. So if I was on a shorter race and I knew I wasn't taking it out, I do have soft flasks with a straw, which I don't have to take out. So I do use those occasionally.
Yeah. Nice. And what sort of do you have sort of associations with the kit that you use, or that's again self-supported?
Yeah, so being in Wanaka is a really kind of lucky place to be, and both summer and winter there's a lot of activities. So I know the guys really well that bring in Dynafit stuff. So I'm kind of a brand ambassador for them. And I mean, I really like their kit, and they're born in the mountains in the European Alps, so they like to go fast and light, and they like to do the sort of adventures and missions that I do. So actually their attention to detail and their high-end quality kit is really, really good. So I'm very lucky to get a pretty good deal with them, but they're the sort of company and kit that I'd choose to use anyway. So it's kind of a win-win situation, actually.
Yeah, and you're wearing Solomon footwear, is that right?
No, Dynafit as well. They do an ultra shoe.
Well.
Yeah. So they've got this ultra shoe which has pretty good traction, but it got enough cushion for those longer distances. I did have a different one of their shoes which has a bit more grip if the weather had turned. If it had got really sloppy and messy, and I'd wanted kind of those deeper lugs, but the cushioning was the biggest thing, I think, for the temperature and the weather that was there that weekend.
And so where it was dry, it was quite gravelly, or?
Yeah, I mean, if you're on the bike trail, it's a maintained bike trail. So that's pretty hard pack. You're going through the tussock, so tussock. And then, it's just because it'd been so dry, all the ground, if you weren't in the river, was, pretty firm. So it wasn't muddy, it wasn't slippy at all. And there's a few sneaky four-wheel drive tracks around. So when you're following those and they're really hard, actually having a nice bit of cushioning, especially going downhill, really, really helps.
Yeah, and through the beach, was that all right underfoot, or was there a few sort of?
Yeah, in fact, actually, that's bliss underfoot because it's just quite nice and soft. So it kind of got spongy. So actually, it was quite nice on the legs for a change.
Yeah, fantastic. But you said that you were kind of like a little kid on Christmas, waiting to get started. Where does that sort of excitement level show up for you before you got into running mountains?
I like to play. Anytime there's a game, I'm probably like a kid. And those people that spend a lot of time with me will probably attest to that. And even so, the actual form of just running isn't enough for me. But if you give me a ridgeline going downhill or some techie trails in the forest, you will probably hear me make all sorts of sounds that a grown man shouldn't. I whoop, I holler, I giggle, I laugh, and it is just good fun. I mean, I grew up playing all sorts of sports. I played team sports. I played rugby all through school and for club, and any sporting team. I was on the basketball team, soccer team, any sort of game I just loved to play. I was a very kind of active youth. So I guess there's a form of competition that I enjoy, but the whole aspect of it being a game, I think, is what really thrills and excites me. And then, being in the mountains is probably just, I mean, I love it. The mountains are what really kind of fills my soul. But and the more technical and winnable they are, kind of that again adds to that game element of it. And if you can feel light and hop and dance and skip your way down a ridgeline, there's not many better feelings for me. Absolutely love it.
Yeah, and does danger and adrenaline ever come into it for you, or it's just the sort of nutting it out and problem solving?
Danger does come in, yes, and adrenaline. I guess everybody has their comfort zone and their fear, and I guess it's like with anything, isn't it? When you first learn to drive and you get in a car and you get on the road, you're terrified when you're going 30k an hour because it's brand new. But you soon get more comfortable with that. And now when you learn to drive and you're cruising at 100, it's absolutely fine. It's the same, I guess, with running in the mountains. If the first time you go and you get to what would be a slightly exposed ridgeline, that's a brand new experience, and you don't know how to react. So you probably take that cautiously. But the more and more you do it, the more familiar with that terrain you get, the more it becomes second nature and habitual, and the more you can just enjoy what you're doing. So rather than like we're driving, you're thinking about changing the gear stick and pressing the accelerator and coming off the clutch, but you don't, you just do that automatically. And that's kind of where I kind of feel I've got to now with being in the mountains, that I spent a lot of time there and I'm very aware of my comfort levels, my own ability, and how I'm feeling and the conditions at the time. And when you put all three of those together, that's when you can either really release and let go and have some fun, or sometimes if the conditions or your ability or the terrain isn't quite suitable for it, then you're busting it back. But so I'm not an adrenaline or a kind of chaser for that sort of thing. Like that isn't necessarily what I search for. But it's definitely nice to kind of flirt with your comfort zone, because when you come back from that, I think that's when growth happens. And what do they say? Growth happens just outside of your comfort zone. You have to get close enough out of it that you can still come back in, that it's not detrimental, but definitely it's just outside of your comfort zone.
Yeah. And then on the sort of energy and keeping the mechanics together, like how do you sort of address the pain, and when do you sort of know that, no, I'm broken and I need to stop? Where does that sit for you?
Good question. It's never always sunshine and roses. I mean, you'll be very well of that with your ultra that you've just done. Sometimes it sucks, and it hurts. Loop 3 on this year was the hardest loop I think I've done in all 3 years. I felt so low for especially the first part of it. I kind of knew and figured out why. And that was partly to do with the fact that I'd been going for 30 hours. It was very, very hot. And the second day of being hot, I was also sleep deprived. So I could rationalize why I was feeling like that. Doesn't help you in the time. It still sucks. It still hurts. But there's never a need to stop. So you got to keep moving, because you know that the lows will pass, as will the highs. So enjoy and embrace the highs when they come and make the most of them, because they're only temporary. But the same goes with the lows. Like, embrace them. They're all part of it. We've all signed up for this. Like, it's nobody's forcing us. It's a conscious decision. We knew it was going to suck, and you know it's going to hurt going into it. So embrace that fact that at some stage it's going to. It's not easy. That's why most people don't want to do it. But I always said to myself, don't quit on a low. Keep moving. And there's definitely an efficiency with movement that I like to play with. That, am I moving this slow because I need to be moving this slow? Or am I moving this slow because I want to be moving this slow? Because if you can just move that a little bit quicker, then you're getting slightly closer to a time when actually it could get better. So I was struggling on the uphills. And then it was like, well, okay, if I'm struggling on the uphills, let's get the uphills done and let's enjoy and have fun on the downhills. Because the uphills will end, and so will the downhills. And yeah, so keep moving until things will change. And if you can move a little bit more efficiently, a little bit quicker, well, that's great. So long as you're not going off the cliff. So like if you're going at 40-minute kilometer pace uphill and you can be going at 35-minute kilometer pace, it's just a little bit more of an intent in walking, then actually that's 5 minutes that you're saving over a kilometer. Now you're doing 50k, so if you do 50 times 5 minutes, well, that's a lot of minutes that you're saving right there. And that all adds up into the kind of big picture. And that works with everything. Like if I'm eating, like I had the dehy meals that I made on transition, well, there's no point sitting down to eat my dehy meal because I'm not moving. So if you're sat, can you be moving?
Mm-hmm.
Even if you're walking slowly, you're moving forward. So moving forward, no matter what pace, is still moving forward. So walking and eating, and then when you feel better from walking, you can walk with intent, and then if you feel better from walking with intent, you can jog, and then if you feel better from jogging, you can run, and vice versa. So yeah, efficiency of movement.
That's pretty cool, mate. And you were giving me flashbacks of the experience that I just had, and you're right. Those, and I think it's like a very broad thing to say that there will be lows, there will be highs, but when you get through the lows, then you're closer to the high again, aren't you? So that's a really, really awesome little thing to, speak to and a parallel to the bigger picture of life. And like you said as well, it's over the long term. In the case of running, 5Ks faster means that over 50Ks you've saved a lot of time. But a bit like life, if you can do something just a little bit more efficient, then how are you going to get to where you want to go? Basically, yeah.
Absolutely. And I think it's all relative, isn't it? So I think sometimes the higher the highs, the lower the lows. But then the lower the lows you are, when you come back out of them, it suddenly is like, oh, I'm back out of them. And it's not until you look back often that you get that relativity.
Yes.
The nice thing with being in the moment, and I spend a lot of the time in the moment, but there is something occasionally to look back and think, you know what? This is where we've come. It ain't too bad. And look what we've come through to get here.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah, whether it's in a race or whether it's, as you say, the bigger picture of life, I think that's quite applicable either way.
Yeah, and it's quite funny you say that. My dad and my brother and stuff, would you do that again on the afternoon? I was like, oh, don't know, probably not. But it took like 2 days. And I was like, oh, looking at other things. And same with Hal. I sort of spoke to her after she got back to transition or whatever it was when she had pulled out. I was like, I'm done. That's it. And sure enough, spoke to her by the Wednesday. Oh, yeah, no, next year. And I'm signed up to this. And this. I was like, what a ridiculous sport.
I think every single one of us at some stage has said, why am I doing this? I'm never doing this again. And as you say, it only takes a matter of time. And then you're like, oh, it wasn't so bad, was it?
Yeah, you've got an exciting event coming forward, and I heard the guys from Crush the Cargill try to draw parallels between childbirth and ultra running. But as you said, I don't think that'll fly in the delivery room.
no, but that's going to be that's pretty soon. That's coming up. Due dates this month, and we're both very, very excited. So Jane, my fiance, she's been there for the Revenant the whole step of the way, all 3 years, and it's very much easy for me to go out and run around. I know exactly where I am. I know I'm safe, but for her, it's always quite hard letting me go because she doesn't know where I am, doesn't know how I'm doing, and time goes slowly when you're sat waiting around. So she's absolutely incredible, and so we're both very, very excited and looking forward to this big adventure that's going to come. So we've got a little girl on the way, and that's when the games can really start. And then I think that's when I'm really going to learn what sleep deprivation is. So I go for a weekend, but 18 years of sleep deprivation is a little bit different.
Mate, it's exciting times, and I wish you all the best with that. But again, it's kind of speaks to the highs and lows, and when you sort of the two of you embraced between the at the end there, and they managed to get that on footage on the Instagram, and I was mentioning House by that stage, and I just said, "Holy cow!" And it was a few tears and things, and what an absolute year it's been last year leading into that, and I know coming down the hill into the finish of my run, I just was, and you won't have had this, you won't have had any music in you, but by that stage I'd resorted to trying to get some music going to get me over the line, and it was a great pendulum song with a great outro, and then I just all of a sudden found myself bawling my eyes out, and I was just like, holy cow. But then I was like, what a year. And then a year it's been completing the Revenant after 3 goes, and then what's to come. Like, it was no surprise. You sort of saw everyone, you saw your fiance, and just had that moment. That must have been high in everything, was it?
Oh, absolutely. I was, overwhelmed is an understatement for it. I was Yeah, it's been a long journey, long process, you say. Last year was an interesting year for everybody, but this has been going on for years, and yeah, just having the support there from Jane. And what was incredible as well is everybody came back for it. So 24 people started the Revenant, but when I came up from that last checkpoint and I looked onto the horizon and this ridge line, and there was maybe 50 people all stood there. Now, some of them had probably been home, had 2 sleeps and a shower, and yet they still came back for it. And they were cheering, and it was, yeah, it was a very, very, very special moment in my life that I'll never forget. And then, yes, coming in, knowing I had time, and then Jane was there. So at that point, that was it. I was gone. Typically, I'm not an emotional guy, but with everything that had gone on, and as you say, the whole process and the whole journey and the whole support and love from everybody, from Jane, from all the competitors, from all the kind of family that's around the Revenant, they're there. So Scott and Tom and Katie's wife that have been there all of the years, that have wanted to see me do it. And finally, we've all done it together. Like, I truly believe that it wasn't just me out there, it was the fact that everybody was there and we all did it together. And just that culmination of the whole process was, yeah, there's not many dry eyes, I think, actually, in the finish line. And I think that just is testament to that everybody there is feeling what everybody else is. That anybody that makes it down to Welcome Up for that weekend will truly understand. The Volkswagen guys that they're supporting every year, they're not runners, but they get it. They turn up every year and they support. They cook your bacon sandwiches when it's done, cook the supporters bacon sandwiches during. They're not runners, but they get it and they understand it, and they're there every step of the way as well. So it's just something special about sharing it with everybody. And yeah, as I say, just to kind of round off a 3-year process was, yeah, a very, very special time for me.
You speak about the getting it. What sort of turned you from playing in the mountains, playing sports, being quite sort of gamified, to, you know, running mountains, running hills, doing races, and then getting into the Revenant in its original year? What sort of switched that around for you and thought, you know, I could do this and probably do it well?
Yeah, I mean, I personally draw a lot of similarities between them. And I wouldn't say I've changed too much in my outlook. It's more the fact that I think is just an extreme version, an example of kind of what I like to do. So I won't change going out and playing in the mountains. There's still plenty of adventures and fun days that I can't wait to have. I can't wait to take our little miss out and kind of share that love and adventure through young guys, because actually I think that would be a good way to slow down and realize the pure beauty of just being a little bit slower in the mountains. The Revenant is just another opportunity to meet with like-minded people that also like to share your love for the outdoors. They like to challenge themselves, and you find that with any event. The ultra that you went, there's going to be people that's going to be the first time they've run that sort of distance, or it could be the 50th time, but they're there. And what's very special about our sport, which I've only really realized recently, is the fact that you stand on the start line with a pro athlete or somebody that just wants to complete the distance, and everybody stands on that start line as equals, and everybody has got to cover the ground. There's not many sports in the world where you can't walk into the a professional football stadium and play a football game with Lionel Messi. They're just not going to happen. But in New Zealand, you can stand on the start line with your big names, with your Western Hills, your Ruth Crofts, and they're just the nicest people you'll ever meet. And they know, and they'll stick around at the end. And those people that come in 2, 3, 4 times as long, they know that they cover the exact amount of ground, and they've been out working their hardest. Everybody has. And there's just something about sharing that I think brings this sort of community together. Because it's hard work, and you go through some dark times and some low times, but that means that you can also celebrate together those high times. Yeah, it's something special.
Yeah, and I think that's probably part of the thing that quickly turns you around of why am I doing this? I'm never doing this again. Is that shared pain and shared smiles and shared stories at the aftermatch. Like we were the next day, and it was quite funny. A few of us had the wrong venue, taking what we'd done on the course to the next day. Still a bit disorientated, but everyone's got the story, and especially the one guy that nearly went to the time limit on the 101 and ended up getting third in his age group. It was just, again, one of those metaphors for life. Don't give up, get there, and shit, you might end up on the podium.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So obviously what next is a bit unknown. It's going to be a brand new adventure, as you said, but where do people find you, and how do people get their lawns mowed if they live in Wanaka?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm pretty bad with technology, but I'm pretty active on Instagram, so people can head over to my Instagram page. I've had so many supportive messages and new friends like yourself that come about from things like this, and that I think is one of the beautiful things about social media and the opportunities. So yeah, adventure in. That's me on Instagram. Feel free to flip me a message. I love talking about adventures, and I'm a bit of a gear geek, so anybody wants to chew my ear off about gear, I'm happy with that. I'll chew your ear back. And yeah, if anybody's ever in, and yourself, if you're down in Wanaka and you want to go and play, there's plenty to come out and here. So any day out in the mountains is a good day. So yeah.
Yeah, careful what you wish for on that one. But also with the gear geek, it's not just running; it's skis as well, isn't it, man?
Absolutely. So do a lot of stuff in the winter season, and yeah, so a lot of the time in the winter, I'm stood there talking to people about skis and backcountry kits and gear, and yeah. Summer and winter, there's always opportunities to go and play.
Yeah. So is that into also ski touring as well?
Yeah. So it's just, I mean, especially the mountains down here, you can't really run in them in the winter. They're all covered in snow. It's a different sort of playground. And I first learned to ski when I left school. I took a year out and went to the French Alps and the Austrian Alps and did a ski season. And I've loved it kind of ever since. So I've kind of fallen into it down here. And yeah, so ski touring is a great way of working up a sweat and getting into places slightly outside of just where the normal kind of skiing crowd will go, and it doesn't take long to get that solitude and kind of massive expanse of feeling so small and insignificant amongst these giants around here.
Wow.
It's a good way to spend the winter.
Absolutely, man. Geez, all the things. That's what Helen and I say. There's too much awesome stuff in this country that is at your fingertips. Are you there?
Sorry, I just missed you there. No, I'm back.
You're back. Phil, because I had one more question for you, Ian. That's what's something that shows up for you when things are always going right, or a way that you try and live your life by, man?
Sorry, can you reword that? What do you mean?
Yeah. So it could be like a quote or a thing that you think about often.
Yeah. So I don't have any mantras or anything like that, but I definitely... I know that everything is temporary. Whatever will happen, things will change. And it is all relative. I find myself saying it's all relative all the time. That you're going to take the good when it comes and ride the bad. And don't worry too far ahead, because at the end of the day, that might not ever happen. So just deal with what you've got in front of you, one step at a time. And it's amazing, actually, how far you get when you just keep moving one step at a time.
Awesome, man. That was, yes. I really like that. Again, it's in a running race or really broad and in life. And that's what I love about those pursuits. They, as you said, create some relativity for you. So yeah, thanks for that. That was a wicked.
So what's next for you?
Yeah. Hunting season, I hope. And then try run again. I tried to run again 2 weeks ago, and then he, after about 2K, said, "Yeah, no, we're not ready yet." And even then, on the weekend just been, I went into the hills and going down the hill. Then he was like, no, we're still not ready yet. So
which is fine, absolutely fine. I'll give you an insight here. I tried to run last week. We have a Tuesday night leisurely run around 5K, and I couldn't walk for the next 3 days. My calf had seized up and is like, okay, maybe I'm not going to run. So I got on the bike and yeah. So take as it comes. Your body knows best.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's just
season will definitely keep you fit.
Yeah, just focusing on unraveling what I did basically, because it was prior to all this training, I'd basically done round the bridges and round the bays. So around the bridges in Hamilton, around the bays in Auckland, that was the longest I'd run, and probably the furthest distance I'd covered is the Blue River up sort of by the Makarora. We walked out of there in a single day, and that was sort of 18 k's tramping. So even so, that was quite a long way off of what I was doing in training. So yeah, it's not surprising that
it's hard work. I know the blue, the Wilk and the Young and the Blue around there. It's not easy going. So
yeah, it's all lots of fun. It's definitely some place I'd love to go back again and be a bit braver and attack some of those spurs. But it's a gorgeous part of the world you're in, and like you said on the other podcast, you 4 days into your New Zealand trip said this will do.
Yeah. Absolutely, this will do, and it's done ever since.
No, beautiful, mate. Thank you so much for your time, and I'll let you get back to your beautiful fiance, and all the best for what is to come. This has been absolutely awesome.
Thanks. Well, I appreciate you having me on, and I look forward to seeing what you get up to as well.
Cheers, mate. I'll press stop.